So the very first Pokemon TCG regional of the year just went down last weekend. It was in Pittsburgh, and going into the season I had a couple of goals in mind, and we actually managed to crush 2 of them in my very first regional of the season. We're going to be breaking down my deck very quickly. We're also going to be talking about the 15 matchups I had. I played 15 games at the Pittsburgh regionals. It was a long weekend. The whole trip was like fantastic until the very end, where on the way back home from Pittsburgh, we hit a deer on the freeway, and it was bad. I feel bad for the deer. The deer we never saw again. We ended up stranded for a couple hours in the middle of nowhere, New York, Dunkirk, New York. Our car was totaled. I'm just glad to be back home in Toronto. But yeah, as far as my tournament performances have been going over the last couple of, basically this last week, I've been playing some of the best Pokemon I have. I've been getting lots of championship points, been doing really well overall. I've been getting like top 16s. I came in second at a challenge yesterday where I went undefeated. Tomorrow I'm actually going to be going to a League Cup, which I'm excited to attend. So for Pittsburgh Regionals, as you guys know, I was hyping up Miraidon for a couple of weeks and months, and I was really excited to play this Magnezone V-Star version I had of Miraidon EX, but I decided last minute to switch decks to something I was a bit more comfortable with in terms of consistency. So my Magnezone V-Star deck was pretty much like a Meta Call kind of deck to go against all of the Lost Box decks out there and the Gardevoir decks out there. There's those decks that need, you know, some small little baby Pokemon on the bench to start up. Now, I did see some really solid success with Magnezone V-Star over the last couple of weeks, but the games that I did lose felt really bad. Those losses were not necessarily my fault. They were basically because the deck was breaking. If I were to lose a game with the Magnezone V-Star deck, there was an 80% chance that loss was just because I bricked. And I did not want to go into a regional where a deck had a potential to break that hard. I wanted to play some Pokemon. I wanted to go in with a very consistent build, and so I last minute switched out of my Magnezone V-Star deck to go for a Miraidon EX deck with a heavy Judge Path count. Exactly, or basically, it was Andrew Mahone's list from the Worlds 2023 that just went down in Yokohama. However, I did make some slight alterations to that list because I did know that what the upcoming meta would bring for Pittsburgh. I was expecting a lot of other people to just use that deck as well. I wanted to be able to get a slight upper hand in the mirror matches and whatnot. Here's my deck list on screen right now, and the 2 cards I made changes for in this deck was I took out 1 copy of Path to the Peak and I put in a Stormy Mountains, and then I also took out one of the Switch cards and I put a Switch. As I made the last minute switch to the Path to the Peak heavy build of Miraidon, I was considering Sajin Park's list. Now, if you guys don't know Sajin Park, he also placed really well at the Worlds 2023 event in Yokohama. I think it was like top 32 as well, slightly below or slightly above depending on how you look at it, beside Andrew Mahone being the highest placing one. And Sajin Park also won Korea's national tournament for Pokemon in the Masters division as well with that Miraidon list. So I really did want to play the Sajin Park list for the event. However, I didn't have enough experience with that list, with that play style, that I would feel comfortable using that list. Some people can just play a list for the first time for a tournament, never test it once, and they do great. I, for one, know that I want to be comfortable with the deck I'm using, because if you're playing a deck that's a little foreign to you, I feel like you're just more likely to make misplays that you wouldn't make otherwise. But I did make a billion misplays on day 2, so we'll talk about day 2 in a sec. So as much as my gut feeling was telling me, yo, play Sajin Park's list, play the higher skill ceiling Miraidon list over your Path to the Peak one, but I was like, you know what? I've had so much practice with this Path to the Peak version of the deck. I think I feel confident just picking it up the night before, even though I do have like months of experience with that kind of style of deck, or weeks of experience. Now, I will have the full Pittsburgh regional vlog on the channel later this week. I'm currently working on editing it, so I'm not going to go into too much major detail into all of these matchups, but I'll give you guys the gist of it because this is my first time doing like a sit down tournament recap style video. I know a lot of other YouTubers do this kind of video. Starting off with round number 1, it was a little sketchy because we hardly made it to the venue on time, and so did my opponent. Round number 1, we were supposed to play against a Lugia V-Star deck featuring single strike attackers like Tyranitar and whatnot, but I say we were supposed to play against a deck like that because my round 1 opponent had a issue with the parking just like we did, and he forgot his deck in the car, and he didn't have the keys to the car, and even if he did, he wouldn't be able to run there and back in time. His friend was the driver, his friend was in the tournament, and he sat down to the table. He got there and he said, hey man, I forgot my deck. you get this win. Just take this win. So I was like, whoa, what a crazy start to my tournament. We're starting off the tournament with a 1-0 lead. Round number 2 was a very scary matchup because it was against Rapid Strike Urshifu. This deck is basically the auto loss for Miraidon EX. And on top of that, I did not have a Flying Pikachu V or VMAX in the deck today. So I was really going against a final boss against an opponent at table 1. And match 2 against James was crazy. They ended up taking the first match, which was about 35 minutes. I ended up winning the second match, leaving us with 5 minutes left for game 3. Now I knew, given the time constraints of a 5-minute game, I knew my win condition, and I knew that I had to go second in order to win this game for the chance at getting that turn 2 KO. And sure enough, he went Inteleon V in the active, attached to Rapid Strike Energy, and passed. And I had the god tier hand, the absolute best hand possible to go for a turn 2 KO. That's exactly what I did, securing myself the win against my auto loss, Rapid Strike Urshifu, in round number 2. Now, round number 3 was a gift from the gods because round number 2 was the hardest opponent I could have possibly faced. Round number 3 was the exact opposite. We played against a colorless Lugia deck. Now, colorless Lugia, for you guys if you don't know, is pretty much an auto win for Miraidon EX. It's pretty much a 99% chance to 1 of you winning. I just destroyed him. 2-0. We finished the match in about 10 minutes. We finished before the match slips were given out. So we had to wait at the table for a while before the match slip reached our table, and then we got a lunch break. So going from final boss at round 2 to easiest win of my life, round 3, what a roller coaster. On to round number 4, we played against Will Chauffeur. Will Chauffeur was playing Gardevoir, a deck I have a personal vendetta against in the current meta because I think Gardevoir players are the slowest. Gardevoirs have like a superpower where they can't lose, they can either win or tie, so I, luckily enough, did not end up tying. Will ended up bricking, I think maybe both games or one of the games. I played out of my mind, like I played as good as I could. So I ended up winning the game 1, he took the game 2, and I closed it out on the game 3. Now making my record 4-0. 4-0 is an insanely strong start to any tournament. 4-0, if you know, whew, oh, feels amazing. Now, going into round number 5, after going 4-0, or even after going like 3-0, I started tweeting to Pokemon. I did the hashtag play Pokemon and everything because they ask you to use the hashtag. And I was begging and pleading them to please put me on stream. So we'll talk about how I end up on stream in just a bit when that round comes up. But round number 5, we played against an incredibly strong player. And this player was Giancarlo B. And he's also from Canada, one of the only, actually the only Canadian I played against the entire tournament. Everyone else was from America. But yeah, Giancarlo is from, I believe, the Niagara Falls area. They're also friends with Cyrus, which is pretty cool, I think. So I think they maybe go to the same locals. Very close game against Mew VMAX. I ended up winning game number 1, and then game number 2 I lost, and then game number 3 we started off his turn 1 pretty much in overtime. Now I was just like devastated because I hate ties. And he had to start where he had to Cram-O-Matic twice. The first one failed and the second one gave him heads, and then he got to put Pokemon on the board. But I could have potentially turn 2 donked him and won the game as well if he didn't hit heads on a Cram-O-Matic. And then going into my turn, which was turn 1 of overtime, I had this god tier hand that if we were to play full game, I absolutely know I would have won. I had just everything I needed. I had Path to the Peaks, I had supporters, I had the generators. I was cooking, man. I was cooking. Unfortunately, it went to full time, so we ended up tying with a win-loss tie for that particular match. On to round number 6, we played again another Gardevoir deck. You guys know I hate Gardevoir players. The player for this game actually ended up at 11th place overall in the entire tournament. Just for perspective, I believe there was 1,739 players in this tournament. He got 11th, and their name is Michael Davidson, so congrats to Michael on the fantastic tournament run. And I absolutely hit the nuts. I just drew perfectly both games, and I destroyed Michael 2-0. Everything I wanted to happen happened for my match on my side of the field, and he was just having a rough matchup. Both games, he had to use Mirage Step to get his Corellias onto the board, and yeah, I played as perfect Pokemon as I could. Winning 2-0 against Gardevoir, that's kind of nutty too, because he could have potentially gone and get a tie in game 2, and then that would have just been a tie for the full thing. But getting a 2-0 decisive win against the person who got 11th place in the tournament feels really good. Of course, I didn't know he got 11th until the end of the tournament. We ended up going 5-0-1 going into round number 7. So now let's get to my goals for this season. 2 of my goals this year was to 1, qualify for day 2 of any major tournament, and then the other major goal was also to end up on stream. Now, if you want to end up on stream for these Pokemon tournaments, you have to have a very, very strong start. You pretty much have to go undefeated. That's just like a given. And then on top of that, you also have to most likely have a unique deck, something that the casters want to cast. Now, Miraidon's not that incredible of a unique deck, and a lot of the decks weren't too incredibly amazing or unique by any means. But because of the person I was playing against for round 7, I have a very strong feeling that's the reason why we ended up on stream. So the casters get to choose what games they want to cast, and I believe Jake is friends with one of the casters on the Pokemon team, Wancho, and so Jake is a Pittsburgh local, so there's like that fun storyline right there. I was basically, after all the rounds, I was tweeting out to Pokemon, yo, please, I'm begging you, this is the best tournament I've ever had in my life. Please, please, please put me on stream. I highly doubt me begging them on Twitter, you know, helped me get onto stream. I was just doing it for fun, honestly. But you could say I kind of manifested getting onto stream if you want to play that card. LDF, I was talking to him, I was viewing him right before the round, and he told me that if you find out you're on a stream game when you get your table, and they have like this piece of paper that says your match will be streamed. So it was really cool. I got to the table, I saw the paper there, and it was freaking, I was like, what? Let's go! This is a dream come true. They ask us like, how do you pronounce your last name? What are your pronouns and stuff? We get to the back where I know I have to get a new shirt because I was literally wearing this t-shirt that day. They were just like, yeah, that's too big of a logo, whatever it is, you're just gonna get a new shirt. And I'm like, yes, I wanted a new shirt. That's why I wore this shirt today, because the only other shirt I packed was all black, and I'm like, if I'm gonna go on stream, I have a higher chance of making stream day 1. So they gave me a new shirt, I handed them my deck and everything, and it was just a really, really cool experience to play on an official Pokemon TCG stream. I will be doing a full commentating video over it, so if you guys want to see that, I'll do my own commentating of that later this week. Azul GG already destroyed me and commentated over that match as well, so if you want to see his channel, in the end, I'm very happy that he did critique it because I played the worst Pokemon I ever did in my entire life. So yeah, I ended up losing that match, I believe 0-2, and I was so excited to be on stream, man. I felt like a kid in a candy store. I felt like a kid on Christmas morning. Even though I lost, I had the biggest smile on my face. I've never been so happy losing in my entire life. Let's put it that way. I was so happy that it happened. Unfortunately, I played the exact opposite of how I was playing all day. I was playing the best I ever had, and then when I hit the stream, I just got hit with the nerves, and I just made every single misplay possible. It was brutal, bro. It was brutal. It also felt like a setup, man, because my opponent, Jake Abrams, was playing Turbo Lost Box, and Turbo Lost Box or Lost Kyogre, either of those decks, are like the hardest matchup besides Rapid Strike Urshifu you could ask for. So I was already set up for failure to begin with based off of the matchup. Both of the games, I used my Forest Seal Stone turn 1 because I'm like, I gotta get my Miraidon set up onto the board. I gotta play some Pokemon. And I got so tunnel visioned on setting up Miraidon turn 1 and all that I completely forgot I had Squawkabilly EX in my deck. Hello. With the ability Squawk and Squeeze, not Squawk and Seize, Squawk and Squeeze, to fix up my hand, give me a brand new hand, let me play the game, and I fumbled the bag, bruh. I forgot what, it was the nerves. It was the nerves. That's all I can tell you. That game for both of us was our win and in with 5 wins and 1 tie. You have to have 19 points to qualify for day 2. We were both at 16. So if either of us win that game, we're qualified for day 2. If you don't, you get to play 2 more rounds and you just got to win 1 of those to qualify for day 2. So on to round number 8. Round number 8 was against a player I will not name, a Mew VMAX player, and it was probably, how should I put this lightly? I did not like my opponent at all. They were playing in a very unsportsmanlike way. Whenever they would shuffle their deck, they would shuffle in a way that they could see their cards. Whenever they would play Ultra Ball, they would say Ultra Ball and just instantly put all 3 cards in the discard, where I always have to go and check their discard to see what they discarded. They shuffled my deck multiple times and they dropped my deck multiple times. I was like so annoyed that entire game with my opponent. It was their first regionals as well, so maybe it was their first time nerves hitting them. I don't know what it was. I've never had an opponent play like that before in my life, so it was kind of something I had to adjust to. I ended up losing game number 1 against them. Their opening turn, they set up the board really nicely, and then they used their Genesect, their last Genesect of the turn for Fusion Strike system for 1, and that one card they got off the top was Path to the Peak. I wasn't able to play the game, and yeah, I scooped after like 3 turns because I knew there's no way I could catch up. Game number 2, I took in a really strong fashion, and then game number 3, we had about 9 or 10 minutes left for game number 3. I made a huge misplay in game 3, which I'll talk about more in the vlog. I would have lost the entire match because I made that misplay, but because we wasted so much time shuffling our cards throughout the match, we ended up tying. So my opponent kind of played himself, and he could have won if we had played out the full game because my misplay was so bad, but I was happy with the tie. And it turns out my opponent for round 8 didn't qualify for day 2, so that is karma at its finest. On to match number 9. It was against Bradley L, a subscriber from my old channel who used to watch SneakerTalk, the main channel, and he didn't even know I had a Pokemon channel, so I got to tell him about that. And Bradley was the most, like, the absolute polar opposite of my round 8 opponent in terms of friendliness, in terms of manners, in terms of, you know, just general being a good, like a happy, nice person. It was so refreshing. I'm like, thank God I got like a decent human for this last match. Now, unfortunately for Bradley was playing Lugia Single Strike. At first I thought it was Lugia colorless because we never end up seeing the Single Strike Pokemon for most of game 1. I had drawn perfectly pretty much game 1 and game 2. I just hit the nuts. I got everything I needed. They prized 3 Archeops in the game 1, so that was already, they had to claw back from that. And then, yeah, I drew perfectly. And being able to hit for weakness, have a Path to the Peak deck, it is just, oh, it felt like it was destiny for me to win that game because of the matchup that it was. I just felt bad after the matchup too, because it was such a great person, such a cool person that you're knocking out of day 2. It had to be one of us, and I just wish I told him after, I'm like, Bradley, yo, I wish I beat my opponent before you so I wouldn't have had to play you and you wouldn't have to play it against Miraidon, because Miraidon is not a fun matchup for Lugia players. That's a stressful one. That was the first ever time I've qualified for day 2 in my entire life. I've been playing the game for about 3 years or so, ever since COVID, the fall 2020-ish. So I've been playing for roughly 3 years. I'd say 2 years competitively. Day 2 is a really big feat, like a really big goal to hit. For the first time once you hit it. It's a really big deal. I was low-key kind of crying after the matchup. I was such a big baby. Holy smokes. Day 2, I did not play Pokemon properly. Day 2, I was just, it wasn't necessarily my opponents playing well. It was just, I played horribly. If I could do the bad misplays that I made on stream, I did that a lot on day 2. And I do realize this video is getting a little longer than I want it to be, so we're gonna kind of speed run these little recaps for each match. So round number 10 was against Eric F, and it was a Miraidon mirror match, and I got absolutely clapped. 0-2. I got 2-0. Loss. Game 1, I made a misplay that was so big that you just can't come back from it. Round number 11 was against Turbo Lost Box. Yay, right? Another Turbo Lost Box. This one was against Peyton Bauermeister, and Peyton was really good. He had a strong day 2 as well. He ended up going 9-4-2, and yeah, I just lost back-to-back games against Peyton. It was rough. On to round number 12. It was against a Lugia Single Strike player, and I was like, thank God, another Lugia player I can play against and get potentially a free win, because I just lost a Turbo Lost Box and that felt horrible. Sure enough, I lost game 1, which was like, what? Oh my God. I forget what misplay I made, but I made such a big misplay that it was just like, I remember going into game 2 and I'm like, I cannot let that happen ever again. Like, ever again. We lost the first game and then we won the next 2, and yeah. Lugia's, thank you for showing up to Pittsburgh. On to round number 13, it was against Kyle C, and it was the first and only Charizard EX player I played against all tournament long. So round number 1, I have a really decent start. I have Squawkabilly as a potential card I can use my ability for. I play Squawkabilly. I looked at my hand, was like, yo, this hand is horrible, man. This hand is so horrible. Just go ahead, take your turn. And I forgot to use Squawk and Seize for my Squawkabilly. I scooped the next turn. I was like, wow, that's bad. Game 2, they had Pidgey Manaphy, and they pretty much bricked and I won game 2 in just as fast of a fashion. So you get 50-minute rounds. Our game 3 was a 45-minute game, and it was close. It was a very, very close game. Couldn't have been closer, honestly. Kyle ended up winning with his Charizard EX deck in the end, with the power of Pidgeot EX being able to grab whatever he wants every single turn. I hate Pidgeot. On to round number 14. 14, my lucky number. We played against another Lost Turbo box. This one was against Calvin Chang. Game 1. I think I just made a lot of, like, this is, at this point of the tournament, my brain is fried, I'm tired, I'm ready to go home, I'm exhausted. So I made a lot of misplays, and I lost game 1. Game number 2, I made some really big misplays as well. Like, I would attack with Raichu and discard 2 energies when you only need to discard 1 to knock out Cramorant. And honestly, I could have won game 2 if I had done a proper judge call, which I should have made a judge call, because it was really close. They made a misplay where they attached their energies with Mirage Gate, and then they looked at their hand and then switched where they put the energies. I was like, I mean, you already made your decision. It's kind of unfair to change your mind on that. I made some big major misplays in the game, and I didn't ask to take those back. I would forget to play Path to the Peak, and that basically is the reason I kind of lost game. Like, that's the reason they got so set up in game 2. I could have tied if I did the judge call. I think I might have won game 2. It was really close. I had the lead pretty much the entire game, but yeah, I started dead drawing by the end of it, so it was a loss for the record for round 14. And now on to round number 15, the last match of the day, because I was not able to qualify for top 8. It was poetic because at the start of day 2, we played against Miraidon, and at the end of the day 2, we also played against another Miraidon player. I don't want to get into too much of the details because it's going to ruin it for the vlog. A lot of this stuff is probably going to ruin the vlog for you, so hopefully you guys will still enjoy watching the vlog. And I ended up winning against the other Miraidon player 2-0, so that was nice. Got to bring back the ego a bit because losing 2-0 against the Miraidon at the start of the day for day 2 is painful. So ending off on the win against the Miraidon felt fantastic. So my final record for the tournament at Pittsburgh Regionals was 8 wins, 5 losses, and 2 ties. I placed 136 out of 1,779 players. I also bubbled out of top 128. Click on screen to watch the Pittsburgh vlog when it's up right here, or check out the North American International Championship vlog, or my first ever regionals down below for Vancouver. Catch you guys in the next video.